What's going on, Detroit Lions fans? Steve here, Detroit Den 3-3. As you can see, flying solo. You guys will be graced by Will's presence tonight. I have some other commitments, cannot make, but Will be knocking out a solo. I don't even know what he's talking about, but I'm sure it'll be a banger. Real quick, before we get into it, members giveaway coming up soon. This is the key featured item to our Super Den members. All right, a signed, autographed Aiden Hutchinson Motor City Muscle helmet. It's absolutely beautiful. Not required. Greatly appreciated to those of you who like to collect some memorabilia, or if you want in any raffles to our Detroit Lions game day tickets that we got. We might be giving some tickets away here soon. There's some stuff in the works. We'll see how that pans out, but we are trying. Think about becoming a member. Again, not required. Greatly appreciated. Listen, this has been on my mind for a couple days. All right. There was a PFF rankings on all of the head coaches in the NFL. Our boy, our leader, Dan Campbell, came in at number 9. When I saw the number 9, I was immediately thinking, I can't name 8 head coaches that I would for sure take over Dan Campbell. It kind of sat in my mind. I was pondering how to spin this into an episode, and then I saw some stuff from a radio host. All right. And this is not a hit piece on 97 Won the Ticket. You guys, if you've been watching, you know my thoughts, my feelings. Podcast give you guys another avenue for some Detroit Lions content. That's what we're trying to do. But Mike Valeni is a huge name in the Detroit sports world. Can't ignore it. When you say Mike Valeni, you've obviously probably heard the name if you're a sports fan. So he made some interesting comments. And again, I'm not trying to do a hit piece or demean anyone's career, but he said some interesting things about this list that I want to talk about. You know, some key comments in his radio show the other day. Dan Campbell is the highest rated head coach who has not won or much less been to a Super Bowl. There is no disrespect in that. So what he's talking about is some of the guys that I took some notes on that I saw were ranked ahead of Dan Campbell on this list were some interesting names. And let me just get into some of my notes here. Sean Payton was ranked number 2 as one of the best coaches in the NFL. Number 1 was Andy Reid. I have absolutely no issues with that. I think Andy Reid is a fantastic coach. What I think is great is how long Andy Reid has been in the NFL, and he has adapted along the way. I mean, I can remember like his Eagles days, and there's some other people that are much older than me that have been watching football a lot longer than me. You remember Andy Reid with those Eagles. Football was a lot different than the way they played defense, the way you played offense. It was completely different. He had some success in Philly, but never got to that Super Bowl, or he got to Super Bowl, but never won one with Philly. Goes to Kansas City, and they got a dynasty going on there, and Andy Reid's the head man. I have no problems with that. That was the only guy I said, Andy Reid's probably number 1. No argument here. But when I see Sean Payton is number 2, the second best head coach in the NFL, I don't know. I just don't know that I could put a coach at number 2 when he hasn't won a Super Bowl in 15 years with the New Orleans Saints when he was there in 2010. I just don't know that right now, if today I'm starting a franchise and I need a head coach, I can't confidently say at all that I'm taking Sean Payton over Dan Campbell. I'm just not doing it. At number 3, it kind of gets a little interesting here. I can understand the thought process. They have Sean McVay of the Los Angeles Rams. Listen, I understand the dude's less than or under 40 years old. He's a great offensive mind. But again, I'm asking the same questions. If I'm starting a franchise, am I taking Sean McVay or Dan Campbell? I'm taking Dan Campbell. All right. I think it's easy to be a coach in LA where it's easy to draw in superstars. And they have Les Snead as their GM. He's a phenomenal GM. He drafts well. They never have draft picks, but yet somehow they always have really highly rated rookies because of how they draft. And I know Brad Holmes kind of a product is that as well. So I just can't see Sean McVay as the 3rd best head coach. Number 4, John Harbaugh. I get it. Baltimore Ravens, constantly like the pillar of success. They're just always in the playoffs. They're always one of the top teams in the AFC. They haven't won a Super Bowl in quite a while, though. They haven't won one with Lamar. They haven't gotten past Mahomes or the AFC Championship game to get to a Super Bowl with Lamar. 5, another interesting name, Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin. I kind of put him in the same boat as Sean McVay. Hasn't won a Super Bowl since 2009. It's been a minute. What's that? 16 years? 16 years without a Super Bowl. That's longer than Sean McVay. Or I'm sorry, that's longer than Sean Payton, not Sean McVay. So I don't know. Weren't they just trying to fire Mike Tomlin like a couple years ago? Aren't people? I've been seeing a lot of reports that Pittsburgh fans aren't happy with what's going on because, yeah, they always get to the playoffs, but they always get bounced in the first round. So I know a lot of people in Pittsburgh aren't really happy. Jim Harbaugh at number 6. I laughed at this one. Listen, I love Jim Harbaugh when he was at the University of Michigan. I think he's a great coach. Yes, he's been to a Super Bowl with the 49ers like over 15 or so years ago, early 2010s. It's just, is he going to be going back to college? I know there's all the Michigan stuff. Will they even let him back in college? I don't know, but it just doesn't seem like he's constantly or consistently wanting to be in the NFL. I think he just kind of bounces around as he pleases, and that's just maybe his personality. It has nothing to do with him as a coach. I think he's a great coach. But number 6, ahead of our guy, Dan Campbell, I don't know that I can get behind that. 7, Kyle Shanahan. Listen, I think if I'm an offensive player, if I'm playing in the NFL and maybe I'm an offensive guy that hasn't really tapped my full potential, or I've been drafted and another team's not using me right, yeah, I can understand wanting to go out to the 49ers and see what's going on, because I think Kyle Shanahan is a fantastic offensive coach. So that's where I think the list kind of starts to see. For me personally, I'm trying to not to be a homer here, but if I'm starting a franchise, I'm taking Dan Campbell, and I'll explain why here in a second. Who's number 9 on this list? Number 8, I'm sorry. Nick Sirianni. I get it. Fresh off a Super Bowl. He's in the same boat as Mike Tomlin. They wanted to fire him last year. So is he really that great of a coach? I don't know. They're so loaded with talent there in Philly. I think that's more of a product of Howie Roseman than it is Nick Sirianni. And then number 9, Dan Campbell. So do I personally give 2 shits about these rankings? Not exactly, but I just don't know that a lot of these coaches that are being ranked ahead of him make a lot of sense. Look, when we talk Dan Campbell, I think one of the most important things to understand is he's rebuilt the Detroit Lions, who have been a dog shit organization for 96% of my life, with a couple glimpses of some good seasons here and there, but not enough. When we hired Dan Campbell, me and Will, I call him Mickey if you guys haven't heard, just a nickname that he has. So if you're not familiar with that, that's who I'm referring to. We were just talking about this. Like, when we hired Dan Campbell, we both kind of said, oh man, is this going to work? Like, a coach with no experience, is this really going to be like a success story at the end of it? Or are we going to be looking for another coach in 2 to 3 years? And it looked rough. That first year and a half, it was pretty brutal. 3-13-1. And then the next season they start 1-6. Was having the conversations with my wife, like, man, we got season tickets. Like, we're coming up here every weekend. I'm taking time off work just to watch the Lions lose. Like, it's frustrating. It's tough. And we're not bandwagon fans. Like, we're going to games regardless. But tickets that year, I couldn't give away. There was a game I couldn't make. Posted on Facebook. I'm hitting up all my Lions friends, and none of them are interested. Now, with where we are today, my phone's ringing Wednesdays, Thursdays. Hey, man, you got any extra tickets to the game? Like, I really want to go. So the culture that Dan Campbell has built has completely shifted, like a complete turnaround. That's what I think is very, very important. When we talk about some of these episodes and we talk about some players that are mentioning that they want to come play for Dan Campbell, we're talking about NFL superstars like Max Crosby, TJ Watt, those types of guys out there that are naming the Detroit Lions as a destination, a team that they want to play for, and they're mentioning Dan Campbell. They're not mentioning guys like Andy Reid. They're not mentioning guys like Mike Tomlin or Sean McVay. Everyone rated on this list. And I don't know. I think that's just so overlooked, and a lot of people don't mention that. So Mike Valenti went on to say, that thing about the Super Bowl, is that required to be a top 10 coach in the league to make a Super Bowl? I think that it's kind of a gray area. And if you guys are on one side of the fence, I understand. But to me, you're a coach. You're a leader of men first. That is the very first checkbox that you have to check off to be a successful head coach, is how do you lead grown men who do this for a living, not high school kids, not college kids. We're talking about adults that this is their first time job, and you have to have someone to lead them. I think it starts with being a former player. I think that speaks volumes, and Dan Campbell's also that. So I think that that's the most important thing. So making a Super Bowl, I don't care about making a Super Bowl. Yeah, I want to get there and have a chance to win, but it's going to hurt like hell if we're Detroit Lions fans and we get to a Super Bowl and don't win, because in the back of your head, in the back of my head, maybe I'm only speaking for myself, I'm going to be thinking, damn, what if this was our only chance in my lifetime to see a Detroit Lions win a Super Bowl? We got there, we were close, but we didn't win. I'll be happy for 2 weeks, but I'll tell you right now, I'll probably be a nervous wreck after that NFC Championship game. We win, and then I'm sitting there thinking, like, man, Super Bowl's in 2 weeks. Like, this could be it. This could be our only time to get there. This could be our only chance to win one. You know, it's the hardest trophy in sports to win for a reason. I think that's why football is the greatest sport out of all the professional sports. But the final comments that Mike Valenti made, again, not a hit piece, not trying to demean anyone's career or their success or their fame, but I just have a different stance on this. He went on to say about this coach rankings, talking about Dan Campbell. He blew a 17-point lead in the NFC title game and got aced out by a rookie last year. Being ranked ninth is actually really respectful. Let's start with this blowing of a 17-point lead in the NFC title game. Obviously, he's talking about a couple years ago out in San Francisco. That game that still haunts us all as Detroit Lions fans, absolutely worst game of my life. I'm sitting there at halftime. I'm looking at flights. I'm looking at rental cars. I'm looking at hotels, trying to make it to the Super Bowl. Obviously, all that blew up in my face, and I got to wear that. But I don't think Dan Campbell himself blew that 17-point lead. Like, Dan Campbell wasn't fumbling the ball like Jahmyr Gibbs. It happens. It's the NFL. Real bad time for Jahmyr Gibbs to have his first career lost fumble. Not his first fumble, but his first lost fumble. Everyone points out that he had a fumble before, but it wasn't lost. Bad time for that. It's a really bad time for Josh Reynolds to have a couple crucial drops on fourth down. That's not Dan Campbell dropping the football. The only thing that I've knocked Dan Campbell about in that game was not taking a field goal at some point in the second half. I think our first possession of the second half, going for it. I think we were in field goal range, elected to go for it, didn't convert. That was 3 points. I think that was a big swing. That's literally the only thing that I can knock Dan Campbell for in that game. The rest came down to execution, some play calling, some bad luck with the first career lost fumble, some fourth downs that hit Josh Reynolds right in the hands. Any other day, I think that those are catches. I can't say that Dan Campbell lost that game other than the 3 points. I don't know. There's so many different factors in that game that I don't know that I can give even a low amount of responsibility to Dan Campbell in that one. So I don't think that part of the comment is fair. Now, moving on in the same comment, talking about being aced out by a rookie last year, talking about Jane Daniels coming into Ford Field and absolutely just whooping our butts, which he did. So if you're a Commanders fan, you guys like to come on here. I'm not saying you guys didn't deserve to win. Jane Daniels played absolutely great. That's right. I don't like to make excuses. I really, really do not like to make excuses, but we were the most injured team in the NFL last year. And I talked about this the other day. Until the day I die, I will be wondering, do we win that game with our roster even 80% healthy? Even 80%. I know that the Commanders had some injuries. They were banged up too. But when I just look at the gauntlet of injuries from the Detroit Lions last year, starting in like week 3, it seemed like every other week we were losing a key piece, not even just like backups. Like, we're missing Hutch, we're missing Marcus Davenport, Alex Anzalone. I know he wasn't 100%. Malcolm Rodriguez, like the list goes on. You guys know who got hurt last year. It's going to haunt me that happened. So despite all of those injuries, we still had the best season in Detroit Lions history. 15-2. That's going to be very, very hard to duplicate. How Dan Campbell didn't win Coach of the Year going through all of that adversity and beating the guy who won Coach of the Year twice blows my mind. I don't know if this is disrespect or if it's warranted. I'll let you guys decide. But I talked about it. 15-2, all the injuries, still got the number 1 seed in the NFC. It's impressive. I get it. We didn't win a Super Bowl. I don't know. It's a heartbreaker. The final topic of today's show is the last comment Mike Valenti made, was mentioning, what if in 2025 the Detroit Lions take a step back, or they regress, or they make the playoffs and they lose, or something like that. I can't remember the exact quote. I didn't write that one down, but it's possible. Anything's possible in the NFL. It's possible we could have a 9-8, 8-9 type of season, and that would be regression. But what do you consider regression? Because we started at 15-2. All right, beautiful season. Regression technically by term could be going 14-3. That's a regressed season. You were worse than last year. So to me, regression has to come with a little bit of understanding that you're probably not going to go 15-2 again. But 12-5, 14-3, getting to the playoffs, that's great. But you got to win a Super Bowl. All right. You have to win a Super Bowl, plain and simple. And 15-2 gives you a really good chance, but technically at 12-5, we went further into the playoffs and got to that NFC Championship game. So I don't like the word regression because that immediately means you're going to have a worse regular season. And by that definition, 14-3 is going to be a regression from last season. And I don't know how to accept that I'm going to be mad about a 14-3 season in the NFL. So my thing is get to the playoffs, make a deep run, let Jared Goff be playing some damn good football at the end of the season. I do think Jared Goff can win us a Super Bowl. So that's my 2 cents, guys. Again, I just have very, very differential opinions of some things Mike Valenti said, looking at this with a broader spectrum, a bigger understanding of the whole picture. I don't know. These coaches' rankings weren't really like ruining my day, but there were some very, very interesting names that I dove into and just don't make sense. And I'm not trying to be a homer. I think the only one that's locked into that number 1 spot is Andy Reid, best coach in the NFL. Other than that, I do think that Dan Campbell is the second best head coach in the NFL. Maybe I'm a homer. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I just have a different understanding of what it takes to win football games. It has to start with culture. It starts with rejuvenating some careers like Jared Goff. It helps when you have a great GM like Brad Holmes, who was drafted well. It helps when you have guys who want to play for you and guys who want to come to Detroit to play football, which is something we have hardly ever seen. So I think that starts with Dan Campbell, the culture he's built. It's just my 2 cents. Let me know what you think. Was this rankings fair? Was it completely understandable, or was it complete disrespect? Let me know. Leave it in the comments. We'll be back later with another show.